Growing up as a rather socially inept kid in the early to mid-2000s, I was very much involved in virtual worlds similar to other kids my age. Although I didn't really dabble in Club Penguin or Movie Star Planet, the one game that really stuck with me was Animal Jam. Animal Jam prided itself on being an educational game for children, which was partially true given that they worked hand in hand with National Geographic. Animal Jam offered many fun things to do in games, such as playing minigames, decorating your den, or my all-time personal favorite, sitting on top of the diamond shop as an eagle for a solid 5 hours a day, flaunting my wealth with my spike collars and headdresses while making fun of the poor. So we did briefly touch on what Animal Jam was, but I'll go a little bit more in depth. Animal Jam was developed in 2010 by National Geographic and Wildworks. It was a Flash MMO with the purpose of educating kids about animals and nature in general. Although the main purpose of the game was to educate kids, most kids could not give a damn about those little fun facts or the random buildings containing information about animals. If you were a kid who enjoyed Animal Jam, I'm sure your main incentive to play was solely for trading, so you could make your way up within the economy, which took most kids years to do. Or you could take the easy way with that end objective like I did by becoming an Animal Jam YouTuber, so people would just gift you their rares, but that's a whole different story. Animal Jam players, who we'll call jammers for simplicity's sake, who had a lot of these rare items were considered much cooler and were respected a lot more by the community compared to someone who didn't have a membership and or any rare items. Throughout my 8 or so active years playing the game, I got decently rare, though it wasn't with the common items you'd usually see rare players have, like spike collars or headdresses or whatnot. Instead, I had a lot of older or beta items since I started playing a lot earlier than a lot of other players did, and I also had a few glitched items and whatnot that made me a lot higher in the Animal Jam economy. There were a lot of different ways to get rare, but there wasn't really one single way that was easy or quick, besides scamming, but that usually didn't end well and kids got pretty smart over the years, but we'll talk about that later. All of the ways were quite difficult and very time consuming. You could make really good in-game art, buy toys in real life for the codes, which was my personal go-to at 12 years old when I didn't have to spend money on rent or car insurance, or waiting patiently for an item of yours to get some sort of rarity and trade up and up, which was probably the most effective but also the most time-consuming way. Pretty much none of this stuff was really able to be done unless you had a membership. Lucky for me, I used to get a 6-month membership whenever it was my birthday or Christmas, and I was born in June in the middle of the year, so whenever my old one would expire, I would just get a new one. But a lot of kids weren't as fortunate as I was back in the day, so I was able to be a cool member and make those little non-members bow down to me with trembling knees. One thing I forgot to mention in that list was getting rares through minigames. There were only 2 games you could really get rares from, the Forgotten Desert and Lucky Clovers. The Forgotten Desert was a members only game for flying animals only, so you had to spend real money still. You had to collect different gems around an expansive map with a group of 4 people. Once you collected all the gems of one color, you got a chest, of which there were a total of 5. The items were completely random. You would mostly get random worthless shit, but you could also get rares and den betas. This game was very time consuming. I would spend hours just playing this minigame to get fuck all. I didn't think about it at the time because, you know, I was like 11, but this was literally gambling. This was my first experience with gambling. The second game, Lucky Clovers, is similar to the Forgotten Desert, but it's only available during St. Patrick's Day, which is coming up, by the way. If y'all want me to log on to my old account and play it, just let me know. Non-members could play this version, and land animals are allowed, but it's the same concept. A twist for the non-member land animals, though, is that some of the clovers you have to collect are locked behind these, like, dance things, platforms. You need 4 land animals to dance on them so you can get the clover, but not many people play Lucky Clovers anymore because it's all about trading, so it's really difficult to do. As for members with flying animals, they could simply fly over and get the clovers without having to dance, so the minigame was pretty biased towards members. In-game art was another way to get rares. I used to draw a lot back in the day, but I rarely even touched the Animal Jam art program. It's genuinely worse than MS Paint, and it amazes me how people can make such masterpieces with it, hence why if you somehow manage to make good art, it can go for a lot of rares. Before the actual in-game art function was a thing, people would make art of Jammers characters and post it on things like YouTube and Tumblr in exchange for rares. I remember commissioning an artist for art of my character, but they drew my avatar after I lost my membership, and I was so pissed because it was the wrong avatar. I didn't want them to draw that one, but they did anyways. Not their fault. I was a stupid kid, but I digress. I traded them an orange short collar for a headshot of my avatar, and they posted the speed paint on YouTube, only to delete it a few years later when they rebranded their channel. I remember crashing out on them in the comments, and they pretty much told me that it was their channel and they could private whatever videos they wanted, which makes sense. Lucky for 13-year-old me, a fan of the artist re-uploaded the speed paint where it currently sits to this day. When I was trying to see if the account still existed, I realized the artist I commissioned was actually a really well-known artist within the Warrior Cats community, and I watched a lot of their content as a Warrior Cats kid unknowingly, so shout out Treetop. I'm an OG fan. I haven't touched Warrior Cats in a solid 4 years. The purchasing of real-life toys is pretty self-explanatory. If you bought any Animal Jam toy, you'd get a code that you could put in-game to get items. One item I still have in-game is the vanity you get from the Vanity playset, which I also still have under my bed. I logged on a few days ago for nostalgia, and people would not stop trading me rares for it. Some of these toys were only exclusive to certain countries, which made some of the in-game items really sought after by players of other countries. increased. Another way to get rare that I briefly mentioned wasn't utilized by all players, but I thought I was a genius for doing it. Starting a YouTube channel. Unfortunately, my old channel is lost to time. It was also a family channel, so I wouldn't give you all that information anyways, but I got more subscribers than I currently have on this channel. I think I sat on like 3,000, maybe? Yeah, I was pretty popular back in the day. One thing Animal Jam YouTubers did a lot were mailtime videos. Animal Jam has a function where you can send jamograms or jags, and if you're a member, you can attach GIFs and a custom message. YouTubers would open these GIFs on video, and people would naturally send really rare items in hopes they'd get a shout out or get noticed by the YouTuber. And of course, there's scamming. I'll come clean here. I used to be a scammer back in the day. Some common scamming tactics were trust trades and people claiming to decline every trade. I remember using a pig avatar and telling people whoever traded the highest and accepted the trade won a singular rare item I had. This was called trust trading. It was all about trust. They'd build your trust by accepting the first few trades and sending back the first few items, with the items getting higher in value until they decide the item you traded was good enough and they'd block you out of your den. You do have to be pretty dumb to fall for something like that, but hey, most of us back in like 2016 were kids and we didn't know any better. Hacking was kind of similar to scamming, but you actually needed some kind of comprehension on how to hack people, so most people just opted for scamming. In 2020, Animal Jam did have a huge data breach where emails and passwords of 46 million accounts were leaked. I was locked out of my account like most other people and had to reset it using the email I used years ago, which I fortunately still had, and lucky for me, I still had all of my items. Some other people weren't so lucky and they ended up losing a lot of their items or their accounts completely. Like every other game centered around trading, Animal Jam has inflation. I think this is a good time to point out how the rarity system works in-game. Some items have this shiny golden tag that says rare, but that doesn't mean that they're rare. These items are called Rare Item Mondays or RIMs. Every Monday there would be a new rare item. Despite them being labeled as rare, they typically weren't all that rare. The Animal Jam Item Worth Wiki helps you actually see what the worth is of items based on the player base. The Animal Jam Wiki will stay up to date with what the players are typically trading for certain items. This stuff is subject to change as inflation in-game changes. For really rare items, they're worth a certain amount of black long collars, which is like the universal kind of currency in Animal Jam, I guess, but slightly more common items are measured in den betas or rims. I was recently able to get access to my old account, and stuff that was never rare or maybe was worth a den beta or two is now worth a few spikes. Something that I also noticed is that spikes have gone down in value, and headdresses have gone significantly up. A step up from spike collars include the aforementioned headdresses and tiki masks, which you can probably tell are racist. I'll discuss this briefly. Rather than AJHQ being decent people and realizing the cultural appropriation and deleting the items completely from the game, they instead only took the items out of the store, which naturally caused their worth to skyrocket, given that there was a limited supply of these items from the jammers who had bought them. This didn't happen because kids were racist, but rather because they realized there was only a limited number of these items in-game. Now that players have spent so long trading for these items, AJHQ would face harsh criticism from their player base if they removed them, so they kept them in-game. Should have removed them from the first place, morons. Another step up from the headdresses and the likes were glitched items. I played before these were even really introduced, and they threw off the Animal Jam economy so bad. Most of the time, these glitched items are so similar in appearance to an actual in-game item, like the color might be off by one shade or one pixel might be a little lighter than the other. Around the map, there are many different shops you can go to. The items within the shops change pretty often, and a lot of items leave and never come back, which is what makes them so high value. I've been scrolling through the item worth wiki and comparing the value of things I have to what they used to be worth back in the day. I own like all of the den music because it wasn't worth jack shit back when I played, but now this stuff is worth like good spiked wrists. Today, Animal Jam is still surprisingly running strong even after 15 years. There are some situations that have caused AJHQ to disable things like penguins being able to wear berets or accordions, but for the most part the game isn't updated because Wildworks sold Animal Jam to make a game centered around NFTs, but that's a video for another day. They have a second game called Animal Jam Play Wild, which is pretty much the same thing except it's 3D. The spinoff has a completely different economy. I played it on like the day of its release, so I probably have some good items, but I hated the idea of having to memorize another economic system at the ripe age of 13. Overall, the game is still kicking it, though it's not the same when I was a kid. The game is mostly centered around trading and economy, and most of the players seem to be older teenagers rather than younger kids like the game's demographic used to consist of back in the day. I think this is in part because teenagers want to relive their childhood, but the only way they have fun is by trading up for rare items they so desperately wanted as kids, hence why the game is mostly about trading nowadays. Thank you guys so much if you stayed this far into the video. I've said this numerous times, but I am sincerely sorry for the lack of uploads. I plan to push this video out, maybe another shorter video similar to this one, and then the big Academy video I have planned, but chances are uploads will unfortunately cease completely after that. I leave for basic training in April, and it's time for me to actually get a move on with my life. I hope you all understand. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.